Yeah, he was. I think it was 8 laps to go, and he was a couple of laps in the lead at that time. And a part that cost less than £1 broke and cost Jackie a lot more than £1. But yeah, there was a pretty successful time for Scotland in Indianapolis. But yeah, Jackie came so close to that, and he came back in '67. But that was it. After that, just focused on Formula One, and that went quite well for him.
Seemed to do not bad. And you were in Formula One as well, Alan, and been closely associated with Jackie since, goes driving for Paul Stewart Racing towards the end of your career. How do you look back in your career in motorsport?
Well, my first race was actually the same day as Paul, Jackie's eldest son, and we both started in Formula 4 at the time. I was a 17-year-old kid from Dumfries, and Paul was there. And the thing that I suppose, and it happened with Dario as well, was that it didn't matter whether we were actually racing against his family. In reality, he was supporting us in exactly the same way. And so, the whole, I would say, of our era, David Coulthard as well, we've had that really big push by Sir Jackie all the way through our careers, from the start, from that first day in '87 right through till today. He's still there knocking on the doors if we need it and that sort of thing. So, overall, I don't think, when we first met Dario, it was at Lark Hall in 1984. Whoever thought we'd be sitting here having, Le Mans wins, Indy 500 wins, and that sort of thing under our belt. But very proud of it, I have to say. And also, it's the words that you said at the beginning. Just following on with that tradition that was started by Jim and Jackie, and in Innis Ireland just a wee bit before them.
Of course, you're Dumfries, as you say. Dumfries are a great provider, southwest of Scotland, of motorsport stars in track racing and of course rallying, as indeed here in the Borders. And West Lothian's not done too bad either.
We've done alright lately, yeah.
Yes, of course, your
bit of catching up to do.
Your brother Marino and of course your cousin Paul Di Resta in Formula One as well. How do you feel being part of this great occasion here today, Dario?
It's fabulous, isn't it? It's typical of Jackie. There was a phone call that was like, "There's John Cleland. Hi, John Cleland. If anybody wants to buy a Volvo, go see that man."
Just make sure you check the registration and the history of it first, though.
Make sure it wasn't his company car.
As seen, tried and tested, no guarantee given or implied. Only joking, John.
We'll give John a chance tomorrow.
Yeah,
He get his own back.
Oh dear. No, this event is typical. It begins with a phone call with Jackie. I'm thinking of doing this event, and of course it started off. It's going to be a wee event. Jackie doesn't know how to do things. All of a sudden it's, yeah, right, Rolex are on board, and I've got these cars coming. And what he was doing, all these lovely cars that you see of his that he raced, he basically picked up the phone and he called the people that owned them. Some of these cars are owned by friends of mine, and they got this phone call. "Hi, it's Jackie Stewart, I want to borrow your car." And of course people just don't say, "Oh no, Jackie." They go, "Oh, okay, when do you want it? When do you want it? I've got this charity thing." That means I've got this charity thing. Therefore, could you please pay the shipping? and they all did it. I mean, look at this amazing turnout. And so, to support Jackie, to support Helen, and for a great cause, it's so cool to have this event in Scotland, to see Jackie back in Scotland with one of his World Championship cars. I don't think it doesn't get much better than that, does it? And Alan, I mean, you guys having a good time, that's what ultimately matters.
Yeah. And Alan, you've seen Jackie up close in your career, and you can, as well as anyone, see that kind of drive and single-minded attitude he has in anything he does, which plainly he is now applying to his charity.
Yeah, there's no question he does apply it, and it's also a passion. It's a passion for, the sport. It's a passion for whatever he's focusing on, and Race Against Dementia is really the focus at the moment. But at the same time, I think there's an underlying passion for this country, and to be able to bring this together, as Dario was saying, was pretty special. Personally, I when I came in here, I just saw all these old cars that I remember from the 70s and 80s, and sort of walking around that. And I think that's the nice thing about it, is that you're actually bringing back a little your childhood memories and history. And for me, I remember seeing some videos of Jackie driving that car and the Tyrrell in the past, but to see it live in the flesh is just something pretty special. And something we should also, take on board, how important it is and how special it is.
Yes, very much. because it's a combined exercise, just in the sense that Jackie Stewart's Classic and of course the Borders Vintage Automobile Club, which is pretty large. I mean, over 1,000 cars going to be here by tomorrow. We do have that look right across the years, right up to well, I'm trying to be noisy.
I think Alan was particularly taken with the Reliant Scimitar.
Well, you all laugh, but there is a Reliant Scimitar over there, which my dad used to sell Reliant Scimitars. And if you look in the back of it, it's a beige thing, and it's got this wee sort of raised seat, which was actually the armrest between the two back seats. And I used to sit astride that thing because that was my seat, but there was no seat belts or anything, and it was a wee while ago. And I was just looking at it thinking, how insane was I to sit there with my dad driving this blooming thing, thinking that he was Sir Jackie Stewart, but certainly not. And but it's these sort of cars that I personally have taken a passion in. The new cars are pretty special, there's no question about it, but it's also generational. So I'm sure there's a lot of families here, and there's a lot of younger children that will be looking at those new cars and coming back maybe in 20 or 30 years time, and then having that little bit of it in exactly the same way, but hopefully a safer way than I had with a Reliant Scimitar.
I don't know what kind of jobs you might have done otherwise. I mean, what made you fall in, Dario, into motorsport?
I was useless at everything else. I mean, I was crap at football, average at rugby, really bad at cricket. I didn't have any aptitude at school. My first sound familiar?
I don't know what you're talking about there.
My first job was, I was thinking about it this morning, my first job when I was driving for David Leslie, and then when the first year I drove for Jackie, I had a side job as driving a truck for Mackay Mazda in Edinburgh. Ian Dewar, a great friend of mine, said if he was sponsoring the car, and he gave me a bit of cash for driving this truck around. And I went through Newton St Boswell's this morning. There's a Mazda dealer there, I think, or what it is now, but anyway, I remember picking a car up there back in the day. So that was I think that was probably my alternative career path, was something involving driving cars or selling cars or something. But I was very fortunate that I got the career I did, otherwise life would have looked a lot different, I think.
So I take it you're reasonably happy that you made that decision to get in a car.
It's worked out all right. Yeah.
Admission time for you, Alan. What would you have been doing otherwise if you hadn't a motor racing star?
I'd have been selling Reliant Scimitars, maybe Robins or something like that, I don't know. I come from Dumfries, and Dario mentioned David Leslie. David Leslie was from Dumfries. He went on with David Coulthard a year later, and then with Dario a couple of years after that. And so from a dynasty point of view, you just think of how Scotland has sort of supported its own in a way, and that's something that I take very close to my heart, is the fact that it was actually a local, I would say, father and son relationship that started off a dynasty, and then Sir Jackie was able to push us on to that next level as well after it. But we've done not too badly out of it, I would have said.
Yes, dynasties seem quite often to come up in motorsport. McRae's obviously in rallying here in the Borders, the Buckleys. I'm sure people might know that name from rallying here in the Borders. Great careers, both of you. Any regrets, Dario? Don't speak in French, then answer.
Any regrets? I mean, there was always the look at Formula One. But would I give up the chance to run in an F1 car with the chance of maybe winning, or maybe not winning some races? Would I give up any of my Indy 500 wins or IndyCar championships? Absolutely not. The chance was there in '97 to become a McLaren test driver, but McLaren hadn't done. I don't think they treated a friend of mine very fairly, and so I didn't do the deal. I didn't trust them, and I didn't sign the contract to become their test driver, because my friend here had been their test driver, and I think they treated him pretty badly. And I told Ron Dennis that, and he had an odd look in his face, and we didn't talk for 20-something years after that. But no, ultimately no regret. I mean, I had a crikey. The stuff I got to do and the life that it's brought me, Jesus. I'm the luckiest man in the world.
You must have followed your cousin's, albeit relatively short, career in Formula One quite closely.
Yeah, very closely, yeah.
And he did quite well. He's still involved, went into touring cars, I think, in Germany.
I mean, he's driving at Le Mans now with the Peugeot program. I think with Paul, I think he had a good F1 career, but not nearly what he deserved, not nearly what his talent deserved. And and I think if with the benefit of hindsight and what he's done now in the Sky TV and everything, I think he would approach it much differently. He's a much different person than he was 10 plus years ago when he had those opportunities. But yeah, I think he had the talent to do, to do anything really, but it just, the opportunities weren't there, and he maybe didn't create the opportunities a wee bit sometimes. But I think he could become another Scottish Le Mans winner like Mr. McNish. Yeah.
Well, 3 times winner, Alan.
Yeah.
Any regrets from your point of view?
I see regrets as like looking in the rear view mirror. You can't change it. And to be honest, anybody that raced against me know that I didn't look in the mirror very often. So in that respect, I always look to what the next thing was going to be. And also, to be honest, I think the mistakes you make actually make you as a person. And the important thing is not making the same mistake twice. And so from that perspective, every time when I look back and think, well, if I'd done this or done that, it would maybe have opened one door, but that door that I went through would maybe have not been there. And so I don't think you can change it down the line. But like Dario, we're in a position where we never thought we would be when we were at school, or when we started karting, or when we started car racing, or when we maybe got into Formula 3 for the first time, or was knocking on the doors, and so we've been very, very fortunate. We've grabbed it and we've ran with it, but it's fantastic to be able to sit here, say we're both the same height as we were when we went in, because we tried very hard independently to be shorter than what we are.
A lot of mine's because of metal to hold it all back up.
But ultimately, no regrets.
Both of you really. I mean, Dario, you touched on earlier on the fact that this is quite amazing.